Welcome to the SPL Rundown, your weekly look at the SPL. I'm your host, Apam. This week, I'm joined by Frost, Dan, and we have a special guest. The coach of the Solar Scarabs, sLainy, is joining us as well. We'll have an interview with Vote Liam Shanks himself a little bit later on. But first, let's talk about week 2. Let's talk about the Valhalla Valkyries taking a pretty convincing win over the Oni Warriors. I think this is probably the best we've seen Johnny. And definitely the Oni Warriors need to still sort out some of the kinks. What are you guys' initial thoughts on this Valkyries team and the win that they were able to get in this match?
I think that it was kind of like a Tiamat experiment for the Onis in this set. I think they probably quickly realized that it's not exactly Dardez's playstyle, I would say. I mean,
Sure.
Tiamat, you kind of want to be getting in there, and I don't think that's Dardez how he's played, you know. I mean, he's an aggressive player, but he's not one to be diving the backline kind of thing, or just, frontlining. So I think it was just like a Tiamat experiment to see how the team feels, how it feels in a competitive setting, because you don't really get to play it that often. I mean, scrim, you can get it in scrims, but it's scrims are like a way different world than actual SPL. So
Sure, yeah. And it's early enough in the season, I imagine, that they're not too worried about, even dropping a set like this.
Yeah, exactly. But that's not to take any away from the Valkyries. I think they played really sick, especially on the ping. Especially obviously like Johnny, he kind of popped off, had a pretty sick set.
Kind of popped off, had a pretty sick set.
Yeah, I think Rafa had a really good set as well. He was just everywhere, and I think Ducky was finally starting to see the best of him as well. I mean, I feel like I've been saying for years, wait for Ducky to come good. But he had a really solid set the whole way through. But the whole team, the way they play, really reminds me of like Season 2 Epsilon. They've got this superstar in the jungle, and so all the other lanes have to do is just basically distract team fight, like do your work and just let Johnny do his thing, make as much room for him as possible. And like him nearly getting a penta is like so on brand, because he was getting pentas like every week in the SEC, I swear. So yeah, he's insane. Wasn't surprised to see him pop off at all.
Ross, what are your thoughts?
What's Emilito doing right now, right? I'll be the one that just goes straight into it. Yeah. These whole we don't know how ping's gonna affect the teams have ruined my predictions. I'm just there thinking they're just gonna be walking into walls at some point. Completely lagging into them, but they take a very clean 2-0. I feel like Johnny's did he sneak in to Georgia or something? The way he was just playing looked like he had the nicest ping. Everyone's like, I got 500, I got 20. It's like, and I love how he's fitting into the playstyle for the Valkyries. Very old school. Old school was just last year. SSG Raffer, and he is more Cherio to me than Scary D has been, who is actually under his wing, but the team's making room, and he is just operating, finding the picks, doing whatever he can. I don't know if it's just him being dirty or if he's got a very dirty Loki or if it's the pick itself, but he goes and he takes out the enemy jungler, and he cuts back in, takes out whoever else he can, sets up for the team fight, and then he finishes it off with the ultimate. Yeah. Just his resource management, his positioning, it's so amazing, but it's really hard to do as a jungler, which just speaks more to the team effort of the entire team. I don't know if it's from all the experience that Raffer has, that he can lead the group to sort of funnel them this way while Johnny's going around, or if Johnny's very vocal in telling them where he wants them. But going back, watching that Loki game is just one of the best. I was gonna say Loki games ever, but I've only seen 6 of them.
Yeah. All the season also, right?
Yeah, just clinical jungle play. It was absolutely amazing, and I'm a big Johnny fan.
Yeah, I actually think one thing that's interesting about Johnny, I think, is that something really smart that he's doing is he's just going full damage assassins, because right now everyone's kind of going hybrid, and I think he's going to make everyone realize that even though the hybrid items are good and they're really good counter items, especially into specific gods, they're just the one-shot assassins are just kind of they've always been the best, and that's how he's building every game, is just full damage. And I think that I wouldn't be surprised if everyone started to go back to those kind of builds, especially with the balance patch.
It seems to me that he also is very comfortable with Raffer's playstyle, which is bait as many abilities as possible, survive as long as possible, and just wait for the cleanup crew to come, right? And that seems, I think that's how Raffer basically tried to play a lot of last year and most of his career. and it seems like it's working very well with Johnny. Like as long as Rapper can, stay alive that extra second or two, the
As long as
cavalry
he
is
doesn't
coming.
run it down too hard.
Yeah, he doesn't run it down too hard. The cavalry is coming, and they're probably gonna clean it up. sLainy, you mentioned a little bit that the Warriors might be experimenting, trying out Tiamat in a professional setting. Do you think we'll see maybe more of that as teams try to figure out what exactly they can be best at on this map, and try to find ways to win? Do you expect a little more? Maybe not. Variety isn't the right word, but just things we haven't seen as much early on in this phase.
I wouldn't be surprised. I think there's like pretty distinct playstyles across all of the teams, more so than I've noticed in the past. Anyway, I feel like there's like even just picks and bans wise, almost every team's kind of different.
Sure. Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if teams like try out new things, especially like the teams that are struggling to try and like see, they always have to be going for like the next thing, So I think people experimenting is probably going to be pretty common.
Sure. So expect some losses, is what he's saying. For your favorite team.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on what your team wants to go for. Do you want the morale boost and you take whatever win you can get, or are you just fully on experimenting?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Exactly.
Any final thoughts on this set? The Oni Warriors versus the Valhalla Valkyries?
Do you know what Oni Warriors are reminding me of at the moment? They remind me of the PK SK team, but when they're in the mid-season, when they're just like treading water and just like, losing random games. Like, they've got the potential, but they're just kind of just not coming together. I feel like, to me, they're really missing Cherry's initiation. I feel like you've got players like Dades, Nika, and all of that who like to come in afterwards and clean up, but they're always kind of waiting for something to happen that just isn't happening. Neil's jumping in, he's doing what he can, but then he's dying, and then they're always kind of standing there like, I don't know, it's just not coming together for them yet.
Sure.
I mean, just as players, I think that Dades, Nika, and Vote aren't like ones to be, the ones spam invading, like, oh, purple's up, let's go there every single time. Red's up, let's go there every time. They're not like those kind of players. And I don't think Fred is either, but Cherry always was. Cherry's always like the kind of guy to spam invade. So I think they're just like trying to adjust their playstyles to work with each other. So
it's a very dangerous meta too. It sort of, unless you're playing perfect for the first 20 minutes, it sort of favored a like long haul kind of team, and Raffer is pretty much iconic for that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on to the Leviathans versus the Titans. We gotta maybe give some props to Yarkor at this set. He popped off in both of the games here, if I remember correctly. Even taunting Cyclone Spit after killing him in mid lane. Kind of something that we haven't really seen a lot of in the SPL. A little bit of spiciness from this Leviathan squad. It does seem a little bit like the Titans are falling further and further behind the rest of the league with each one of these losses not really looking that much better than the previous loss. I don't know. You guys want to talk about Yarkor, or you want to talk about the Titans struggling?
And talk about all of it. It seems like Yarkor's got the fire, but you've got one of the most aggressive duo lanes with Aurora, with Cyclone Spin, and is it because there's no smooth transition that it feels like they come in cold, or how they have stiff knees when they get into the mid phase or something like that? But they even go for these very aggressive drafts, and they don't really do much of anything with it.
Yeah, I fully agree. To me, it feels like, I know it's a massive cliche. People go, well, you need to set the pace, but it feels like they get these, like Frost said, they get these early game picks. They've got it all ready to go, and then they just kind of sit and wait and see what happens. They're never the ones, gotta sound like Anatoly, but they're never forcing the issue. They're never getting in there, which is funny because they've got Aurora. I think Aurora is like the one that the whole of season 6, you just spent the entire time like at the enemy's back camps, and so I don't know. Do you want to see more aggro?
I feel like they just don't have a leader. I mean, you think of any of those players, I mean, I don't know them all personally. I haven't teamed with a lot of them. But like you look at them and you think, who of them is going to be a commanding voice and telling people where to go and what to do, or setting a game plan? And like I know Aurora is like good with that stuff to a degree, but I don't know if he's like a huge leader. Like someone like Mike. He's like commanding everyone around, and I don't think they have that on the team. And I think they have pretty quiet players almost. So that's it. to me, when I watch them, it just looks like they don't know what they're doing. And I don't mean that in like a BM way, like they're bad players. They're obviously all insane. It's just like they just don't have guidance. And I don't know if I don't really understand too much why, because I feel like Cherio was kind of that person on his team. So you would think he would be able to help one of those players transition into that role, but I guess it's not an easy thing to learn how to do comms and lead. So that's what I would imagine they're trying to work on.
That's difficult from the coach role, right? Like in the end, game day, all he can do is say, "Let's get it," and like that's it.
Yeah.
Not to mention
no
like,
Yu-Gi-Oh action.
He's like 10 hours ahead. It's probably like 3 in the morning when he's like trying to coach these games. You know, that can't
Tell me how
help.
it goes.
Yeah. You know, the word that is like sticking in my mind about this team is they just look like tentative. I don't want to say scared, but they just don't want to. They're like so afraid of making mistakes that they don't try to make the play. You know, and I think some of that comes a little bit with just chemistry and knowing sort of the limits of your team, so to speak, which will just takes time. I think you just have to play with players and understand that, but. I don't know. Some of it just seems like they might be coasting a little bit, knowing that phase 1 is not as important. I don't want to say coasting, but I don't know. I didn't expect Cyclone just looks kind of flat to come out this first couple of weeks, and that's not something that I really expected. So, and then the other thing, like, why is Paul picking Jean Kui? What is going on?
That was kind of a theory tying all into that.
Dan, what are your thoughts? You seem to be animated.
It's a massive brain play. Kill the vines in one hit. Total game changer. Top pick.
Frost, what's your thoughts?
I think they spend the first few days playing the way that they think they should, so that they can gauge where they fall flat. Play it a little more just to make sure, because you don't want to do something and then immediately change it. You have to figure out what worked, what didn't, because you might accidentally change something that was working, or you stick to something that wasn't. So they are going to need a few games before they can go, okay, that's definitely not working. And I think right now they're sort of transitioning to what they can do. Paul, I'm not saying that he plays scared, but he plays very pocketed. Pocketed, that's a weird word. In all his previous years, he's always very much quarterbacked it, even with his Scylla of like throwing all my damage, but my 3's like 5 years behind me, so I can just go straight back into it and I'm perfectly safe, not getting touched. That's why he's on this sort of pick now. Yeah, he is going to get touched more, but it allows Scary more room to maneuver and less Hail Mary throws, and I guess we're just going for running plays now.
Sure. I mean, I thought Scary looked the best he's looked so far this season, but the rest of the squad seems to be struggling, the duo lane especially. We kind of skipped over the Leviathans basically dismantling this team. Is it just as easy as that for the Leviathans? Are they right up there with the Jade Dragons now?
Yeah.
I think they're up there with the Leviathans at least. It's their meta. It really is. Like, I don't want to just cop out and be like, well, the game's not balanced around them right now, but historically very aggressive, not snowball, but ramp up, nice even ramping risk reward metas are better for Cyclone Aurora. Right now, you're almost risking more by trying to be aggressive and playing up in the early. And I also don't know if they want to play that way, right? Is this Aurora feeling like an Ares is going to work in this meta, or is he being stubborn and like, I'll make it work because any other way is boring to me? Whereas we know Leviathan, aka Old Sanguine, they will play the meta. They are perfect. It is fun for them to play meta.
I mean,
I think. Oh, sorry, sLainy, you go.
Sorry. I feel like it might be disrespectful, but it also could be the fact. I mean, we didn't scrim them last week, so it's purely like just guessing. But it could be the fact that they have had a horrible week of scrims, and they had like a couple good scrims on like those gods, and they just tried to pick gods that they've done well with. Because that's like a morale thing, Sometimes if things are just going badly, you just go with what works. Just like as a comfort thing almost. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was even something along the lines of that, where Paul just couldn't seem to make anything work. So he played Jonqui in one scrim, it went well, so he decided to play an SPL.
Yeah.
I just think the Leviathans look like a better team than last year, which is insane to say because they've lost Net Druid, who I really rate, and I thought Yako was such a good solo, but it's just the Julio show at the moment. Like they play with such swagger, and I think they've really improved their. So for me, their biggest weakness last year was they'd get these like really good team fights, they'd build a lead, and then they'd come to end of the game and they would just baff around in front of Phoenix for like half an hour. And now they get to the end, and they're really professional, really clean, and like. Against the Titans, even on the Titans' best fights, it literally just didn't look like it was ever going to go well for them. Like, there was one point I remember seeing where Julio gets Ares pulled, and he's got upgraded beads with Relic Dagger and his ult, and he's getting Ares pulled into 3, and he just doesn't even bother beadsing. Like, that's back up in like 90 seconds, but he's just like, not bothered, like, doesn't care, just walks straight out. It's just no fear at all, total swagger. Yeah, they just ran over them, really.
Yeah.
Definitely a very hot team, and it might be because the Nets really split. Is he Justin Timberlake or is he Fergie? Man's looking like Fergie, where just on Twitter. By the way, she's not part of the band anymore. Hasn't been for a while. Yeah, they went out for blood. That looked very personal, especially when Yardcore is just kind of like picking off 2 and then just pelting the boy in the back because he's gone to the safety of his own tower. Can't do anything there.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on this set before we move on?
I just want to say Wrong U is insane. I don't think he gets enough props in that team. He's so good.
sLainy?
Yeah, I think Leviathans, I genuinely think they might be better than the Dragons. I wouldn't be surprised if they could 2-0 Dragons whenever they play next.
I believe they play in week 3, so
yeah.
Ooh.
That'll be a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Solar Scarabs versus Oni Warriors. We got the coach here.
I mean, I guess I should give it a really quick like rundown on that set. It's easy to say like that, or make up excuses, but we genuinely just played terribly that day. I don't think anyone would agree. It was like every person individually like woke up on the wrong side of the bed, and it was just like not that day. Like nothing kind of seemed right, even in the team atmosphere. Like no one was tilted, but sometimes when just things feel off, and that was one of those days. Like fundamentals just weren't there. But even though like having those kind of games like is obviously going to make people like worried or scared of like that kind of thing being consistent, but I think we're all like smart enough players where we can confidently say a game like that will never happen from us again. Like those 2 games will not happen again.
I think this is part of having rookies, right? Like there's only so much you can tell someone to be prepared, but when you get tossed in the fire, it really shows you how much a burn hurts, right? And sometimes you just got to get burned a couple of times before you build the calluses up. And I think I don't think there's any Solar Scarabs fan, of which I am one of, that was like disappointed, because we know that there are going to be some sets and days like this where things are just not working because these players are going to take some time to come up to this SPL level. Is that sort of how you guys are feeling about it too?
Yeah, basically. I mean, a lot of the mistakes that we make, even in the other sets, the ones that we won and the one we lost, it's the mistakes that we do make. They're mistakes that you instantly learn from and won't make again, kind of thing. And that they're mistakes that you could only kind of get punished for in a really competitive setting. So the more
you're playing in the SPL, right?
Yeah, exactly. But the more like we have those situations, the less those mistakes should ever happen again, kind of thing. So I would definitely say like it's something that is fair to say was expected, but I don't think will keep happening. If that makes sense.
And Frost, your guys' thoughts on this set?
I think that was the best part of describing it. Rookies, to me, have to be picked up and splattered against the wall in the SPL to get the ranked rust off of them. In ranked, you do not feel like you're losing the game until the Titan goes down, and even then it's like it was whatever. In the SPL, you could be losing from minute 1, 2, 3. Like these players practice every minute. They punish you every minute. Whereas in ranked, it's just like, I'll be fine. I'll come up with a 5-man taunt in the end, and then we just walk it straight down a fire, or they're going to throw into us. Here, you can't expect that kind of stuff. And I think it kind of shows that there is that amount of leniency in ranked versus the SPL now against this caliber of players, especially. more of that, a lot more of that, and I think they are going to play up to the standard.
Yeah, I have to agree. It's all a learning curve, isn't it? The first set. I mean, if you look at this on paper, a few weeks ago, you'd have been amazed to get any result against these guys. So I think for game one, for example, it was close until there was that fire giant sort of 25 minutes in or so. But until then, it's, maybe they're a bit ahead in goal, but it's nowhere near over. So I think there's a lot of encouraging signs. Especially, I thought it's funny with Bobby. I thought he had kind of part of one of his best sets and kind of one of his worst sets as well, because on Amir, when he's going forward, he's so good, but then sometimes just gets picked walking around the jungle. Just sort of, I think Athena was particularly brutal for that, because Athena just like a bit of a death sentence with the taunt. So it's one of those things where when you're with a team this young, it's all about seeing the good signs and building on that.
Yeah, and of course, this is the game that Dardas doesn't want to experiment on Tiamat too, right?
Yeah, that's the excuse we'll go with.
Yeah.
That's why we lost.
I'm done with it, he says.
Sorry for interrupting you, Frost.
I was wondering, though, who's making calls in the trio, the mid jungle support? Because out of context, Bobby was putting himself where he needed to be, but within the we talk about fundamentals and we talk about smite theory, and it's sort of like fire giants up, you need to be here. This is where the support needs to be, blah, blah, blah. But within context, this is where the support needs to be, unless your ADC is not there to back you up. Yeah. Then you're a dead man zone. And that's sort of where I'm seeing Bobby is he plays really well in a funnel. If we have the spotlight on him, he's playing phenomenally, but then you zoom out and I'm like, your team is nowhere near you. So is it a, come on guys, step up with me, or is he just kind of pushing a little too far, too fast?
It's kind of like a mix of like everything that you guys said before. It's like Boronic and Layers are kind of used to being in ranked position, so Bobby's like calling things early and advanced and going for those plays. But Bobby's current issue right now is patience kind of thing, and that's what we're trying to focus on. Is he's making these sick plays, but there's no one quite in range to follow up with those sick plays, So he's obviously working on that. And he's aware of it himself. So he's a smart guy. So I have like no worries that that's going to change, or that isn't going to change. And then obviously, like I said, Veronica and Layers, they're just not quite used to having to be in those positions yet in a competitive setting. Because usually in ranked, you're not always waiting for your support to be in the exact right position to go on the engage or find a pick, So it's like kind of just working on the 3v3 together. And then also like it's just new players. I mean, granted, those three have like teamed together before, but it's like a whole new meta. Everything's different. We have different side lanes now, and they kind of have to figure out how to like work around each other. So it's kind of like figuring out where the roles are and who wants to be like the primary shot caller, who wants to be leading the team, kind of thing. So it's like kind of like a learning phase for us as well.
I do want to mention the Oni Warriors a little bit, who did win the set. We see Mika play the Tsukiyomi back-to-back games. And I think we've sort of seen it be pulled out in the solo by a couple other SPL solo laners. What are your guys' thoughts about Tsukiyomi in the solo lane? What does he sort of bring to that lane that you don't get from some of the other picks?
It's not just Tsuku. Yeah. It's Bluestone. Bluestone is so goddamn strong. It allows him to clear, and like you can't do anything aside from just watch him do it. That gets him through the laning phase, and then you get into the mid and late, and he is a brawling monster. He's really hard to stop. Really good zone control. But I think if Bluestone didn't exist, I don't think he'd be there. I really don't.
I think if Morrigan didn't exist, he probably wouldn't be there either.
Or that.
If Morrigan, I think it was like, maybe I'm not, or maybe I'm like being unfair with my assumption, but I think he wouldn't have played it if they didn't have Morrigan. Because I mean, you kind of saw it, like he wasn't really doing anything in lane, and then like late game, like obviously late game they were ahead and they were playing team fights well, but I don't think he was like some like spectacular pick that was worth him losing lane. I mean he got soloed and stuff, right? Like that usually in a game shouldn't ever get a solo kill if it's being played cleanly on both sides. So I feel like it was just a Morrigan transform god more than anything, and maybe it was like an experimentation thing, like the Tiamat kind of thing. But I personally don't think like you'll see many Tsukiyomi solos coming up. Could be completely wrong though.
This week, I had the pleasure of interviewing Vote, the ADC for the Oni Warriors. Talk about Season 8, the new roster, and a look at Vote's long SPL career. Take a look. Hey guys, I'm here with Vote, the ADC for the Oni Warriors, to talk a little bit about the new roster, Season 8, and maybe delve into his long SPL career. So let's start with this new roster, having a new support and jungler. A lot of people think those are the most impactful roles. How has it been sort of with sort of these new people who are more prone to shot calling and things like that? And also I imagine like losing Raffer and Cherry was a pretty big deal as well for this team. Can you talk a little bit about Neil and Cuvo joining?
Well, Neil and Cuvo went like a lot smoother than I thought it'd go, to be honest. I thought it'd be a bit rougher at the start, because Neil, Raf, different players, and Cuvo and Cherry can be similar,
Mm-hmm.
because Cherry plays like the Q engages, you start the fights and stuff like that. Fred can do that, but you can also just play hard carries.
Mm-hmm.
And Cherry can do that as well, I guess. So it's like, no, the difference is Cherry would talk a lot,
Mm.
and Raf would just like get told where to go by Cherry.
Mm.
Whereas Neil and Fred are kind of like back and forth in comms.
Sure. Can you talk a little bit more about that? You know, do you think the chemistry is going to take some time, you know, just to get used to the way that Neil maybe wants to play support or the way that Cuvo is going to come gank? Is that going to take some time still, or has it been pretty smooth? It sounds like it's been smoother than you expected.
I think it's been pretty fine. Obviously, there's some gods that you can't play because they're ping and stuff like that. But I mean,
Sure.
that's just something we have to deal with.
Yeah,
I
think a lot of teams are dealing with that too, right?
Yeah, Valkyries are 5-man EU, which
Yeah.
sucks. But those actually been playing pretty good,
They have
even with that. But yeah, I think it's just synergy. I think it's fine. We're all kind of friends, so I mean, Fred and I have been like playing against each other for so long.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, I think the time is sort of it's been showing up. I feel like the past couple of sets you played this past weekend have been a lot better than the first week of SPL, of course.
Yeah, for sure.
And so the signs of improvement are really there, and I think we can only expect more from you guys. I do know that there are quite a few trolls on this roster. So who's been trolling the most so far in the new roster? Is it still Nika?
Nah, it's probably Neil.
That's probably Neil.
Yeah, for sure it's Neil.
For sure, Neil.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about Season 8. We did already bring up the ping issues. Can you talk about how that is affecting your team? Is it maybe affecting sort of the picks that you want to pick, or maybe even the play style that you guys are trying to play because you have a couple of players who are on higher ping?
Well, it makes playing through mid like a little bit harder, because that's where all of our ping people are all going to be in the core 3v3. So it makes it a little bit harder playing through mid. Like you said, god picks. So you can't really play certain picks. The Dodgers want you to certain gods, but just on ping you can't. Same with Fred, same with Neil.
Yeah.
So it's gonna limits us.
I imagine you don't really want to give away which gods are
Nah.
are being affected by the ping. Sure. Let's focus a little bit more on ADCs. I feel like we've seen ADCs kind of have pretty big impacts, especially in the Leviathan sets. Do you feel like the ADCs are pretty impactful on the game right now compared to maybe how they've been last season or earlier on in Smite?
I think so. I think if you can get like full build, even just like 4 items without being really far behind the enemy solo liner, you're gonna have a good time.
Sure.
The items you can get right now are just kind of stupid.
What items are stupid specifically?
I think the arrow is just the Oni arrow, whatever it's called. Gilded arrow, that's one.
Yeah.
Gilded arrow. I think that start item was just completely dumb.
Too much crit?
Even the rank 1's good. So
Yeah.
I don't get it. The rank 1's good, gives you more gold. And
Sure.
the rank 2 gives you 20% more gold, gives you base crit, gives you attack speed. It's only like 5% crit or something like that, so it's not like that big of a deal, but still.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit? We've seen some sort of new and nuanced starts in the SPL that we don't really see in ranked or in other sort of levels of play. Can you talk a little bit about how these starts are impacting the early duo lane? Because I feel like, you know, we see the Dragons kind of use some of these starts to get pressure from wave 1 in the duo lane. Is that something that you guys are looking into and working about or around or working with?
It depends on what you pick. Because you have like, say, you have like Jing Chen Bog, you're not going to get pressure on that lane.
Sure.
So does it, like, if you start, if they both do an equal start, it's going to get screwed over. But say they do the rank start where ADC starts red and supports purple, and you in support start purple, you can get Harpy and get 2 faster.
Sure.
So you can maybe get pressure on the second wave and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just, I think it just depends on what you pick in the 2v2.
Sure. And I got a question here from our analyst Frost, who sort of wants to know: are you looking for, you know, the solo kills in this duo lane, or do you think going and soloing opponents is maybe not the most beneficial thing to be doing?
I mean, most of the time it's just risky.
Yeah.
It's not worth the risk, because if the jungler shows up and you die, then you just fall behind and you just kind of screw yourself over. And it also depends on the matchup.
Sure.
There's just certain matchups that are like unplayable for certain characters.
Yeah. I feel like I heard Zap say, watching the SPL this past weekend, that you know, he's just gonna stop rotating to fights, just farm it out in the lane and you know, get big. It's not even worth you know, mid game rotations and things like that. Do you sort of feel that same way?
I think sometimes rotations can be fine.
Mm-hmm.
But if you rotate and say you get to like mid camps and the enemy team just starts like, getting out, and then you just lose a wave, then it gets a bad, you know.
Yeah.
But if you rotate and get like 3 kills, then it's definitely worth the rotation.
Yeah. All right, let us switch a little bit to your long SPL career here. I want to talk a little bit about your sort of rise up with rival in EU, because I don't know, maybe you can correct my memory if I'm wrong here, but when you guys started out as Cyclone GG, I think you guys were all maybe not the most well-known players, and then by the time sort of EU rival ends, you know, with the league moving to America, you guys are some of the most notorious players in your guys' roles. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, that come up over time and, you know, what went into all of that?
We just played a lot. Like Season 3 Worlds, I think all the teams that didn't qualify took a break, and we just kept scrimming through the whole 2 months leading up to Worlds. So we were practicing like the energy teams like that. So we we're getting like, really good practice and really like, the best teams.
Yeah.
So that helped us a lot. Did that like 2 or 3 month periods, whether we got our most growth.
Sure.
And we were just like all good friends, and we all thought the same about the game. Like we all thought about how to play team fights. We all thought the same way, play team fights objectives. AJ really hammered that into us as well. Like just do objectives, get out. No point of fighting for something. You don't win the game from getting kills. You win from getting objectives.
Sure. You know, it's kind of odd though that you're sort of the only one who is still in the SPL right now. Were you maybe surprised to not see sort of the team of your old teammates make it into the league this year?
I think it's just really competitive. There's so many good players. There's so many good players that even aren't even in the SPL.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really surprise me. I'm pretty sure they could have gotten into a team on their own, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But they all wanted to play together. I wanted to
Yeah.
play with Nico and Dardas, so.
Sure. I don't know. It's just a little bit weird because I think we sort of, I mean, 2 years ago, if you would have said that, you know, most of this team is not going to be in the SPL, I think people would have been very confused about what happened, you know? So I
think they got a lot of players got better. Like the Leviathans out of nowhere, you know.
Sure,
They got the top now. So
they are.
Teams like that, players like that.
Yeah. Is this, you know, a good thing? You see sort of like the skill level of sort of all sorts of players increasing, right? Like you said, the Leviathan sort of come out of nowhere in the past 2 years to, you know, really make a very strong team right now. And I feel like we've seen that even with some of these SEC players, especially out of EU, right? We have like Johnny and Genetics and Julio, all these people making pretty significant impacts early on in the SPL, I would say. Even Haddox, for that matter.
It's good for the growth of the game to have this constant flow of players able to play at an SPL level.
Yeah. You know, there have been sort of some conversations about like a quote-unquote friendship league. Do you sort of feel like that is the case here? And what are your thoughts on people who say that like this is maybe not the optimal way to construct teams?
Well, I think you kind of have to be friends with people, because if you don't, people don't like you if you like see you like just arrogant and stuff in ranked. People aren't going to want to team with you, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of need to get along with them in the ranked team first.
Sure.
You kind of have, but you also have to be like good enough. So I don't know. I think there should be some form of relegations, but I'm not sure how you work that into the current format, especially with COVID and stuff.
Sure. Well, I think now that sort of it's all under high res, it's probably easier for them to do relegations if they want to, right at the end of the season or beginning of the season, right? Like, because then they don't have to like say, oh, well, org, now you have a choice. You might not be in the league next year if your team isn't that good, right? And then that really, you don't have to worry about what orgs think of relegations, and orgs hate relegations. That's what I will say,
Yeah, I think it's just like this year just really makes everything just worse. Well, last year, I should say.
Sure.
Makes everything more complicated.
Yeah, with COVID and all.
Yeah.
All right. Sort of my last question here. I've been asking this of all of the players that I've been able to interview. Do you have maybe any rivals that have been sort of your, the villain to your hero story through the SPL? And sort of the flip side of that coin, are there any people who you would consider a mentor for you, who helped you along in your SPL career?
Rivals, I mean, the only one is really like I played against a long time is Emma, but when we were rivals, because like we're good friends as well.
Sure.
Basically, the only one I played against for a long period of time. So Baron Zap, I didn't really play against because it was an EU.
Yeah.
And there's like no other EU ADC, if I recall correctly.
Sure.
And mentors, not really.
Yeah, you just been sticking it out by yourself?
Kinda, yeah.
Alright, Vote. Well,
and I guess like the old days, it was when Game Hunter was playing ADC, it was him.
Sure, okay.
That's when I was like a really a proper noob.
Yeah, that's a name I haven't heard in a long time,
Yeah.
All right, Vote. Well, I do want to give you sort of the time and space here to shout out whoever you want to shout out, call out whoever you want to call out. Captain Twig very nicely called out the Jade Dragons and the Leviathans last week. So now it's up to you to call some people out. And also, I just want to thank you, and the floor is yours.
I don't want to call anyone out because I like everyone.
You like
in
everyone?
The league. Yeah, there's some ranked players, but you know what? The ranked players they can get by. But go buy our merch. That's all I've got to say really. And in-game stuff.
What about any shout outs then?
Shout out to Nico, I guess.
Shout out to
Nico. For keeping the queues up.
Yeah, he has been slamming those queues pretty hard.
He's saving the rank scene. Sure.
I do want to remind all our guests, go pick up some Oni Warriors merch at shop.smiteproleague.com. You get to support all your favorite players, and don't forget to pick up the in-game warden icon as well in the Smite game. Thanks a lot, Vote. Thanks for showing up, and I really appreciate talking to you.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, have a great Season 8. Let's go to the Jade Dragons versus the Tartarus Titans, and man, these Jade Dragons, they kind of just look unstoppable, right?
They kind of win games, yeah.
Just, I mean, I don't know. I don't even know if there's too much to talk about. Like, the Titans weren't able to get off the ground in either of these games. They end up with a total of like 7 kills to like 30 for the Jade Dragons. The one thing that's been stuck in my mind is everybody on Jade Dragons have these insane KDAs. Is that like even a meaningful statistic if it's above 20? Like, what are you learning about these players, when you have like crazy KDAs? I think Herwin had a 27.85 KDA or something like that. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. I wonder what their total game time is throughout the season. It's got to be, they've got to play about an hour in total and won like 3 sets. It's ridiculous. They just coast through. Quickly, you check your phone. Oh, they've won. It's off. Yeah.
They haven't been particularly quick games, but they have just been like suffocating, I would say.
Yeah, they're playing really clean. They're like obviously still stereotypical Ghost rival, like aggro. They're still really aggressive players, but they're making a lot like cleaner invades and then less room for the enemies to like punish it. And then at the same time, I think they're also they have that playstyle where they're making less mistakes, and a lot of the teams right now are just learning to play with each other because there's so many roster shakeups, like so many things are different, and then obviously ping issues and stuff as well. That like teams are just taking a lot longer to adjust than I think as normally happened. Whereas obviously the Jade Dragons have like basically made no changes. I mean, Hurry is obviously insane. He's playing nuts, probably the best he's ever played. But I think Hurry's always kind of been the player that will play to his team's level.
Yeah.
I think like if he's on a team that is not playing the best, it's not like a motivation thing. I just think that's like how he plays the game. Like so if he's on the best team, he's probably going to be the best mid laner. I think he's just like that kind of player. But other than Hurry, I don't think anything else has really changed between any of them. They can still play the exact same way that they've always wanted to play, and they just have to have Hurry adapt to that playstyle, which isn't which as a mid laner, I mean, I subbed in after not playing mid for like 2 months, and we won a set against SSG. Like, it's not hard to play with those kind of players around you, you know. So
Mike and Final K are, you know, doing whatever, and even Sam. I think Sam has basically become an honorary frontline member, right? He's not really carrying these games so much as just making sure that Panda and Hurry are just in a spot to do all the damage and get all the kills, it feels like.
Yeah, it feels like for the other teams, you know, when they want to fight Jade, Dragons are nowhere, and then suddenly someone will be walking along in the jungle and they're dead, and then suddenly 3 other people are dead and the game's over, and it's like they just suddenly all come together so quickly, and yeah, game's over. It just feels like they never really had a chance. You're like, well, what was this to do about that?
All right, we have to hear from Frost here, our Dragons fanboy, right?
I was mostly wondering if for sLainy, is this how you wanted them to play the years prior, as you were the coach for the core of this team?
maybe I was the issue. I mean, obviously I always want them to like not make mistakes, but I mean, it doesn't make me like watch them and think like, darn, I wish I was with them when that was happening, kind of thing. If that's like, you know, anything.
Yeah, but what I'm mostly getting at is not like I wish I was there with them. No, but have they surpassed where they were before, or are they just sort of polishing off, you know, cleaning up? Because there could be a team with higher potential, right? They're just off to really shaky starts. If the Dragons if they're not that far off from their skill cap, essentially, right? They could be in trouble if, for at least story's sake, there could be a team with just higher potential than them, but Jade Dragons are closer to topping off right now.
Well, I get I get it. Sorry for misinterpreting it before.
No, you're fine.
I would say that they, in a non-disrespectful way, I don't think that they have like become that much better. They've obviously like I said, polished and gotten better at their mistakes, but I think that's kind of it right now, which obviously is them getting better, but I don't think it's them becoming like hitting a new level kind of thing. You know? I think there are still mistakes that they make, and there's still ways to beat them. They're not like some unstoppable, like no one can beat them. That's why I genuinely think the Leviathans can beat them. I think they make mistakes and they can be punished. So I just think it's them just like cleaning up and not getting to a different level yet.
Like,
no, go on.
It's like that American footballism, right? Like the team that makes the least mistakes is going to win, and when a lot of teams are making a lot of mistakes, all it takes is to make 1 or 2 less, right? The game starts.
But to me, my worry, especially as a fanboy of this team, for they swap around, but essentially 3-4 years now. The longer they spend in the spotlight, the bigger the target on their back. And if they're at the top, they, I think, grow the least when they're at the top. This team, when they're in 8th, they get massive growth, massive potential to just fire up. I don't know what it is. They have underdog syndrome, growth like nothing I've seen before. When they're at the top, it's just almost week by week, there's not much progress aside from cleaning it up, and it almost hits their mental. That's why we see them in the middle of the year, out of nowhere, just like, you shouldn't be dropping these games. Oh, but they are, and severely. So yeah, I think that's my worry there.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair, like, worry to have. Another thing that doesn't help them is they don't. Obviously, I coached them for 2 years. They don't have a very good scrim ethic. Like when they're in game and scrimming, they're perfectly fine. They won't like troll games or like brief games or show up late. But God, do they never want to be scrimming? Like it's like it's always like coming up with excuses to cancel. You know, like the amount of times that we like would cancel just because like kind of just want to go to the gym. You know, and that's not like one person. It's like everyone across the team, like at different times where they're like, I just can't be bothered. And I think if they kind of keep up that attitude, that it's very likely that someone like the Leviathans, who are just grinding nonstop, like, and just truly trying to get better at the game every moment they can. I mean, just look at them in rank. They play the same 2 gods over and over and over and over again. Like, a team like that could overtake them if the dragons keep up the way that they scrim. If they keep that up.
All right, any final thoughts here? I know we maybe skipped over the Tartarus Titans, but I don't know if there was too much to talk about there. Yeah, get in on the Tartarus Titans here, Frost.
Yeah, I was going to get in on them, where at this point in the game, or in these sets, I'm very genuinely confused and wondering if Aurora is okay, because he's playing the most like defensive Cabrakan that I've seen from him in a very long time. He's gone from playing his aggressive picks to a bit of a hybrid pick, and now a very aggro character that I know he's comfortable on, but in such a slow pace. Like Cabrakan is one of those steamroll characters. He gets a good lead early, and you just cannot deal with him because of the sheer amount of pressure. And now it does feel like pressure is a lot riskier to come by, leading to a very lukewarm set out of him, going 0-7-3, falling severely behind. Maybe it's that goddamn benevolence, I don't know. But it's almost the same as the Warriors. Are they struggling to find their identity? Or is this one in particular just really stubborn for the meta? You know, because I think every player would rather win playing their way than win playing the meta. Unless you're Leviathan, they're both, right? so I can't tell if, and we like to think pro players as unbreakable, just peak mental all time. I do think their mental and their personality just make huge impact on their decisions. So I don't know if they are going to swap over to try and win, or if they're just the kind of team that only want to win while expressing themselves.
The Bolts versus the Valhalla Valkyries. And this one, I think, you know, I said, you know, Valkyries kind of didn't look that great. You know, the Bolts, they had a pretty close game 1, but I think game 2, the Bolts sort of just stomped on them. I don't know, it seemed to me kind of that the carries, especially Zeros and Emilito, were, I don't know, like I said about the Titans earlier, they seemed very tentative in this game. And what are your guys' thoughts? I also want to point out maybe Haddix had a very nice set of games here as well. We can talk about Chadix a little bit too. What are you guys' initial thoughts on this set?
Obviously, like you said, Haddix played really sick. He's definitely like not showing most of it, being his basically like first SPL. I mean, he's like subbed in and played games and stuff, but like first real team, you know, where he's like started on, I think. He's playing really sick in that lane. It's almost like they like have been playing with him for years, like the amount of synergy that they all have, which I think is like a really big point of why they're like as good as they are, is that they have so much synergy. They're such good friends. I imagine they all trust each other a lot. But also I feel like the picks and bans weren't the best in that set for the Valks. They kind of like changed up how they were like getting their victories, it felt like. I mean, I guess they had like the hyper carry Johnny, but like on set and stuff. But it just didn't feel like the same, if that makes sense. It didn't feel right, like how they were playing.
I mean, feeling when like the Janus goes 0-4, that's not the impact you want from the mid laner. You know, as much as I love Zeros, I don't know. I just felt like both the carries for the Valkyries had pretty disappointing games. You know, and we basically only seen Emilito play Jingwei. I imagine because it's a easy god on the ping.
Yeah.
You know,
pretty fair.
It is. You still have to be impactful, I think, right, to win these games. And if you're not providing the impact, you know, maybe it's time to switch it up a little bit. I don't know.
My man came out of retirement just to play Jingwei over and over. It hurts so much.
Has he played another god at all?
I don't think
he played
so.
Heim. I think he
did
played
play
Heim.
Heim.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, that's right. He plays Heim because of the 3 and the 4. It's really easy to get away from everything. Oh my goodness. Interesting on the Giannis pick. Is that something Zeros is known for, or are they now all doing the? I also have a Giannis. You know, like last year, it was. What was it? Oh, it was the. I also have a Hell, and I also have a Persephone. Every mid kind of trying to show that they would, and either just went, you know what, I don't, or I don't like it, so ban it, or work around it. You know, so this early in the season, are they all trying to go? You know what, hurry, we also have a Giannis, and we can take it from you.
I mean, Zeros used to be known for having a really good Giannis. I mean, he played it like on Dig a fair amount. I think was the last time he like actively like played it. But like I think he's had like a pretty dirty Giannis. I just think the way that you kind of have to play Giannis has changed. He's more of like a roam around the map, hyper farm, go lane to lane, whereas Zeros is more of a I like my lane. I'll stay here for a while. You know, yeah, it's comfy. Not as much danger as anywhere else. So I just think it's like more of like. He obviously has a nuts Giannis. He has the mechanics for it. He just doesn't fit the playstyle anymore. Maybe.
I found with the bolts though. I found the bolts quite a bit like they won and they looked good, but there are times where I find it a bit frustrating. I remember I saw a random Twitch chat comment that said, "The bolts make every game look like a ranked game," and it's just so accurate. It's like I don't know what it is about it. I keep expecting just that little bit more, but I was glad to see Hadex popping off because he's a beast, and Barra had a really good set as well. I think he got a 14 and 2 in the end. So you know, yeah, steady improvement. But you know, I think this is the sort of game that they would want to have gone into and absolutely crushed. So I mean, they did get 2-0. It's not like I'm criticizing them, but you know, always hope for that a little bit more. I think.
Well, I mean, yeah, having it be like a 10-0 game versus a 17-9 game, I think is a very different feeling, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Jake was nuts. He was getting freezes on everybody, insane walls. I just have to be a lot closer on him. And I don't know if it was a caster or somebody said it. I can't remember where they noticed, or at least made the theory, the idea that the Valks do a lot worse when the entire team is NA. And so I don't know about the internet. It's just tubes. I don't know if that's a thing for them, but yeah, they've got a bit of
block.
that. Yeah, I think so. It's just a play style. I think the bolts right now are where I wanted the Warriors to be by now. You know, by now, definitely a lot higher for like the Warriors and all that. Bolts are playing about as well as I'd expect them to, but definitely showing improvements from the last few years.
I wonder how much the sort of the rate of improvement has been decreased because of sort of the visa situation. No. Do you find, sLainy, that like players are able to improve faster, or maybe not faster is the right word, but you know, more steady improvement when sort of everyone's together?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like they're just gonna get better practice when you're on lower ping. I think I personally think like the biggest impact would be outside of like obviously just you're playing on high ping mechanics, but I think the biggest impact is how they have to adjust picks and bans, because there's like gods that you just can't pick on high ping. Like when Fred picked Camazotz, I was just kind of confused because Camazotz is pretty. I mean, he's pretty hard on high ping. Even his ult is pretty annoying to use on high ping. Like you rubber band back a bit. I don't know if you guys have ever played on high ping, but it's not like a fun god on high ping. Yeah, and I genuinely, like, if I was coaching them, I wouldn't even think about playing Camazotz just because of the ping. I think it's just like detrimental. You're just not going to hit enough. Like back when on Rival 2 years ago, right before we moved, we were scrimming NA, but Ben was still in EU, and he just played Bakasura every single game. And obviously, we never played Bakasura. We just played it because it's a crutch guard on high ping.
Sure.
And that's obviously going to be taking an impact on drafts. So, like, it's just like you guys said, like Jingwei, just pick a safe guard. You know, you can't. It's hard to die on Jingwei. He can't be playing like super aggro hunters because if he misses, then you know
he's gonna get punished super hard. Yeah. I wanted to get your thoughts on.
He manages.
sLainy, I wanted to get your thoughts on Loki, because I asked this of the panel a couple weeks ago about why so many of the EU junglers are picking up Loki, and Zap has consistently been saying in his stream, it's because Loki is good on low ping. Loki's good on low ping. And none of my panelists wanted to back up Zap's expert opinion here, so maybe you can tell me why Zap thinks all these EU jungglers are playing Loki.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's pretty fair to say he's a pretty easy god on high ping. I mean, he literally, his 3 is like a pretty huge AoE cone. I mean, you just have to walk up to them when you're invisible. You can walk through minions, you can't get body blocked by it, you know, like you can get right up on top of them. The ult's a huge circle now, like he's a pretty easy god on ping, but I don't think it's like, that's like a big reason. I think Loki's just a pretty strong character right now.
Okay.
Yeah, his biggest issue last year was like levels 1 through all the way to like 9. He was pretty much useless. No impact. Now, I think it was Mifflin. Somebody was saying that before Loki really wanted to catch you out. Now he's just a lot more of a team god. He dumps his whole kit. It's big circles. If you were gonna ult somebody before, you had to be very, very careful, or somebody would save the person. And now you're in deep water. But now it's like, yo, I'm gonna hit the person I want and whoever's near him.
Yeah.
It really is a easier god to play on high ping, but he's also just gotten a lot better.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, his 2 like is just like, I think it's actually like his most insane ability, if I'm being honest. Like it's just huge damage mitigations, like and then you also have to take into account that you're getting your passive, so you're like, it's a huge swing if you take into account the passive increase and the damage decrease, that like most characters can't fight into that, and it's like a huge circle.
Let's move on to what I think everyone considered probably the match of the week here, with the Leviathans versus the Kings. I think it was a pretty interesting first game because the Leviathans don't get a kill at all, and the Kings end it pretty, I don't know, clinically it feels like. But then, you know, the Leviathans really stick it to them in games 2 and 3 and end up with the set victory. Tiamat is finally looking good. I think this is the first time Tiamat has won an SPL game. And of course it is Shinto who is piloting the Tiamat. What are you guys' thoughts on this game?
I think this is the one I mentioned earlier, where it was Fergie versus Justin Timberlake, and Netrioid just had to take it for being either in a poor matchup against your core, or for just like his team not showing up that day. It was not the day to prove that you made the better choice by leaving the team, essentially. Unfortunate for him.
He did at least solo Yarkor once for a bit of bragging rights.
He did.
Yeah, I just thought I knew this game was going to be a kind of powder keg beforehand, but I think so. I remember saying the first week we did the SPL Rundown, I remember saying that Twig's teams win so much for a reason. It's because they're so like, you know, Twig does his way in the jungle. It's so organized, and that game 1 was like probably the cleanest game like I've ever seen. It was unbelievable. It just kind of won everything, every objective, every buff. They were all over the place, and I felt like Leviathans never really had a chance. But then games 2 and 3, they just got it nice and scrappy, and they just ran them over because their team fights are insane. But I actually made notes during this, and games 1, 2, and 3, all of them just say in big letters, Tings is so good. Like even on 200 ping, he hits everything. I don't understand. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that I think that set like shows you why like teams are like valuing Tiamat like to like a high level, you know, first pick, first ban almost in every game. I think if there's 2 players right now that I think will have like an insane Tiamat, it's probably going to be Shinto and Big Man. So I'm kind of surprised in game 3 that the Kings didn't take Tiamat. But I mean, to be fair, Tiamat's like main damaging ability, her 1 like in range stance, is really hard to hit on high ping, and like that thing's like, because it's already pretty hard to hit all of them if someone's juking anyway on normal ping. So imagining that on like 130 ping is like, no thanks. So maybe that's why they gave it up. But I think that does, like I say, show why she is so valued. Like Shinto just knows when he needs to be going in with his melee stance, and he knows when he needs to be going out with his range stance, and he just kind of like gets those stance swaps like perfectly, kind of thing. So yeah, I would say that set kind of was 1 in picks and bans, maybe like that's a bit extreme, but I just think like giving up Yamoja and Tiamat in game 3 when he had already showed that he was doing work with the Tiamat, and Rongyu's always had a really good Yamoja, just for Ymir that doesn't even have like that much of a great matchup into either of those gods that you know that they're going to pick. I don't know, I think that was like just kind of a mistake on their behalf, but
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. It's like, I know Kings are going for that strategy where it's like leave everything open and then we can get our picks, you know, they might get theirs. But, you know, they're prioritizing Ymir, which is fair enough because like Genetics has an amazing Ymir. But at the same time, game 3, Leviathan's first 3 picks were Yamoja, Set, Tiamat. And it's like, how is this happening? How are they letting this happen? And what, yeah, like you said, what's frustrating is that like Yamoja's matchup into Ymir is amazing. Like, it's pretty much one of the best, I think, in the game because she can catch him out so easily. So, you know, I get you want to let things through, but maybe not let through the things that the Leviathans keep picking and keeps punishing the Ymir.
You got any thoughts?
Yeah, I think he was expecting them to go on him. Or not punish him nearly as fast as they were, because that was the. I'm feeling if he had held out for like 2-3 more seconds, they probably could have got a turn on it, but he was just getting shredded way faster than anticipated. And I don't know if that's like on the team or if that is realistically just a no-fly zone for Ymir, because that team had so much lockdown. I don't know why he would even bother picking Ymir at that point, especially knowing that we didn't ban these characters. They love these characters. I'm about to pick a very immobile character that has 3 roots, 3 self roots. Sorry, into his own kit. It was I don't know, almost suicidal, but it was just brawling games. Aside from game 1, I think was the cleanest one from the Kings. But then they go out to lose it. So as far as standings go, how do these guys look potentially going up against the Dragons?
I think they got to be number 3 right now. I don't think any team in sort of the 5 through 8 range has looked as good as the Kings have looked. And there's a pretty big gap between the Kings and then the Leviathans and the Dragons. It sort of feels like as well.
I personally, I mean, I think that those 3, obviously Leviathans, Dragons, and Kings, are like pretty fair to say by far the best teams right now. But I actually think the gap between the Kings and the other 2 isn't that much, if I'm being honest. Obviously, I think the Kings already lost to the Dragons, right? In that first set. I mean, it's an obvious excuse is ping, and like, you know, not playing together as a team. I mean, that team, I know when they like are all moved in, they'll probably be spending a lot of time together. You know, pretty like social team. So I think that that's like an important thing to take into account. And then I also think that with knowing Ben, and I love Ben, Captain Twig. I love the way that he plays, and love the way that he thinks. Like he is like a player that really does adapt throughout the year, and will get better and better, and like has a ramp, which is like pretty scary considering that I would say he's already playing pretty well. If maybe his KDA doesn't like show it, he's making some like run it down plays, but I mean he's still Captain Twig. He's always going to be doing that. But like if you're watching him in team fights, he's still like playing lights out in these team fights. So I think that team is actually really close in the standings with the other 2 than what it shows right now anyway.
I just want to see them on land, man. No ping to worry about, not even in the conversation. I don't know, hardware breaking. Yeah.
Hindu man and his hammer.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. Any other thoughts about this? Any thoughts about maybe the Leviathans this set? Is this just sort of kind of expected? I know Yarkor really popped off on the Turnabout. Game 2, he went 10-1, and you know, game 3, I think was more back and forth between the teams, but eventually the Leviathans do pull it out.
I think the Leviathans are just beasts. I would say it's just kind of expected, honestly.
Sure.
Which like goes against what I just said, but I just think that they're beasts.
Yeah, Julio's turned into a win conditional to himself as well. Like when it starts failing in the middle, he just comes in from solo lane and just runs it as well. It's ridiculous. It made me laugh so much watching the Leviathans play though, because they just sit and the other team's like red buff, and like, you know, they'll get killed there once or twice and they just go straight back. Like they just don't care at all. They're just gonna sit in the enemy jungle all game long. Yeah, they're just really good.
Yeah, only thought for the Leviathans, I want to see them experiment more. I don't know, that's just never been a strength with this team.
I think you're gonna have to pay money there to get them to experiment more, Frost. You know, like
at some
you
point,
might have to crowdfund something like that, right?
Play stuff that's not in the meta, please, because these are gonna. Maybe they will, because the changes are a lot more aggressive this year. But
do they need to though? if it's already going really well, do they need to?
I think so. Like last year, they were the top team, right?
I mean, the Dragons haven't experimented at all. They're still playing exactly the same way they played.
They should too. Everybody. I want to see more experimentation. These wins just don't matter. But them, they're like, the other teams have shown that they do have a tendency to experiment and expand beyond it. Whereas them, even at tournaments, are just like, oh, it's the same base and everything. That's why I will pick on them a little bit more. But
yeah,
you're right. Everyone's just kind of playing to their standard. Twig's probably being the weird one, but even then.
Too much Erlang Shed in the jungle for my taste. I mean, I love Erlang Shed, but I don't know. I don't know about this.
I mean, I think your like criticism is completely valid. Like with wanting them to experiment, I would just say like, just be like careful with that judgment until like it becomes like important. Because right now, like if they think that the way that they're playing is the way to play, which it very well might be. Why would they need to change that if they can just keep perfecting it at the way to play the game, you know? Like, if a meta changes, and for some reason, like, playing aggro and, like, invading loads early game, it becomes less, you know, as good as it is, the Dragons might just be screwed because they haven't adjusted their playstyle, which I don't think is true. I think they're still pretty good.
Yeah.
They're still insane late game. But, like, my point is just like the Leviathans might just be perfecting that craft kind of thing.
It is true. Like we've got a few different styles coming out from different teams, so maybe they are the ones. If they're the ones that got it right, and everyone has to adapt to them, that they're just already ahead of everybody else. So risk reward.
Yeah. Any final thoughts, or should we move on to make picks for week 3?
Let's do it.
All right, let's get on to the picks for week 3. Let's start with Oni Warriors versus the Olympus Bolts. Frost, I think we'll start with you here. Who you got, Oni Warriors versus Olympus Bolts?
That's a difficult one because you got one team that's trying to build themselves up while the Bolts are already built, you know. Team friendship over there. Cute looking rough on the ping. Surely, this is the one. I'm just going to gambler's fallacy myself, right? At some point, I'm going to be right, and the Oni Warriors hit their stride. Is it this week? Maybe not, but I'll put it in this one. It's not going to be the most convincing stride that might, you know, tweak the ankle a little bit. So I'll go 2-1 Oni.
All right, 2-1 Oni. Dan, how about you? Oni Warriors versus Olympus Bolts.
Yeah, I think Bolts are actually going to win, but like I feel I'm the exact same as Frost. I feel like the second I don't pick Oni is when they're going to actually come good. So I've got to go Oni. Let's go 2-0. Fuck it.
sLainy, how about you? Oni Warriors versus Olympus Bolts.
I think the Oni Warriors take it 2-1 as well. I think like the Bolts started out at a really high level comparative to the other teams, along with the Jade Dragons and Leviathans. But I think that their rate of improvement isn't as much as some of the other teams. And like, whilst the Oni Warriors haven't like exactly shown that that they're like improving at a big rate, but I think that they're going to start like getting their stride soon. And I think this week will be it.
All right, who am I going to pick? Everyone picked Oni Warriors. Am I going to be a contrarian?
Dan said Bolts.
Oh, Dan did say Bolts, right? Say 2-1 Bolts?
No, I actually said I think Bolts are going to win, but I'm going Oni.
Okay. So it is.
It's a 2-0.
I know. As soon as I swap, dude. As soon as I swap from Oni, they're gonna start winning. I know it.
Well, I'm gonna choose the Bolts here, and you know, make sure to hedge our bets as a show, right?
100%. Always getting it right here.
Let's go 2-0 Bolts for me. Dan, why don't you start us off here with the Valkyries versus the Kings?
I think this is an easy Kings 2-0. I think like the objective style that the Kings are doing is like the exact worst play style for the Valkyries to face. So I think 2-0 Kings.
sLainy, how about you?
I think the Kings just 2-0. I think they execute their game plan too well. Usually I think they come in with like a clear play style and they usually do it pretty well. And I don't think the Valks do that. I think they're pretty reactive. So I think the Kings are just going to do whatever they want, kind of.
Frost?
Question. Isn't this game being played EU?
Is it?
I don't think so.
In the terms, they said if both teams had a majority of players, that's where the server would be. Aren't both of these?
I could just be unaware of the rules, but I don't.
Ooh,
I think they told us it would just be NA, but I could be wrong. Could
check
be
spikeproleague.com.
Where is it? News here. It's when they did the new formatting. There we go.
This is professionalism. Researching on.
I got it. Sorta. Let's see. Oh no! See, first time the teams play each other in the Phase 1 round robin. All games will be played on North American servers. There you go. And then it's the second half where they're going to try and experiment with the mixed servers. This would have been a good one to put on EU, but then, regardless of that, I just think that the Kings have found their way in this meta currently a little more. I don't think it's nearly as late as Valhalla likes to make it. So, and the biggest problem for a lot of teams is they don't call objectives well. There's no way you get that on Genetics, on Twig, on all of these players now. 2-0 Camelot.
Yeah, man, I'm waiting for my Kings jersey to come in, so I got 2-0 Camelot here as well. Okay, let's start with you, sLainy, on the Leviathans versus the Jade Dragons. I think this is sort of the match of the week, so to speak. Starting us off on Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon. What do you think is going to happen here?
I mean, I called it earlier, where I think Leviathans genuinely can beat them, but I just truly think it's 50-50. Like thinking like now, I don't think I could call that set like confidently that one team's going to win. But I guess I'll just go with the boys, my guys. I'll just go 2-0 Dragons.
Ross, how about you?
Okay, unless I'm severely underestimating this meta. 2-0 stomp on Dragons. Something about their culture makes them stomp out whoever is even remotely near them. Yeah, they kind of mess around and almost throw to the bottom teams, but if you're like second and third, there's that almost level of respect to where they go, no, we have to put you down so severely that nobody even questions that you're anywhere near us. 2-0, 20-minute games. None of those 30-minute shenanigans.
All right, Yarker not even going to get a chance to taunt, according to Frost. Dan, round us out here.
I was going to go Dragons, but I can't stand this. I can't stand this Leviathan slander. Go on, 2-1 Leviathans. Let's go.
Yeah.
Sheen's going to pop off. Yarkor's going to be spam taunting.
I wonder how much Hurwin has a Tiamat. You know, are we going to see the Jade Dragons try and pick up the Tiamat away from Shinto? That might be an interesting storyline to look at. I'm going to give it to the Leviathans. Let's give it to them 2-1, you know? Got to make the Jade Dragons work for it a little bit, right?
I just want to say, I don't think it's going to be a 2-1 either way. I think whoever wins the first game is going to win the second game.
All right, now you convinced me. 2-1 Leviathans. Let's go, sLainy.
Let's go.
All right, let's move on to match 4 here. Scarabs versus Titans. Let's start with you, Frost. I think we're back where we started here.
Scarabs here. Just getting the last second look at these. I think this will 2-0, actually. Scary is going to have an easier game this time. Like, it's one thing to be new to the role. I also don't think his early matchups were forgiving as far as the teams he had to go against. Like those are not the proving sets. This one, though, is like a nice, easy little lob towards you. 2-0 Titans.
2-0 Titans. All right, Dan?
sLainy, you going to take that?
He's not looking at the camera. He doesn't mean it.
I'm out here texting. Yeah, oh, babe, what you want for dinner?
Dan, who you got here? Scarabs versus Titans.
Oh, I just have this feeling that this is... Sorry, sLainy, but if I was the Titans player, this is the matchup I'm looking forward to like, you know, let's get it going again. But I think 2-1 Scarabs. Go on. Get bugged.
Get bugged.
Not just 'cause you're here.
Bug boys.
Good bug is
sLainy, I'm sure it's a 2-0 for the Bug Boys for you.
I think I wouldn't be surprised if it's 2-1, not because of like a confidence issue, but I think we're pretty good at adapting and realizing the mistakes that we make in games. So I think if we do drop a game, the game after that will perform pretty well. I mean, obviously it didn't show in our last set, but I think it showed in our first 2 sets. I truly think we're like making pretty big improvements game to game. So I'll say 2-0, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's 2-1. But that's not like due to me thinking like we're not good enough to 2-0 them. You know,
Sure,
I think it's just good at adjusting.
because he believes in the competitive integrity of the league. It wouldn't be a good league if everybody 2-0s.
Exactly. That's it.
I of course, am going to take the Scarabs here. Scarabs 2-0. All right, Dan. Start us off here with Leviathans versus Oni Warriors. Man, a lot of great games this week.
Yeah. I think Leviathans just run over Oni Warriors. I love the Oni Warriors team, but I just think this is going to be a bit of a car crash for the Oni boys. But yeah, I think I have to go 2 on that.
sLainy, how about you?
I mean, I think it's fair to say Leviathans 2-0, but I think it will depend on how the Warriors play versus the Bolts. I think if what I said where they that this week is where they're like kind of figuring out how they want to play, figuring out each other's play style, I think that they could actually beat them. But I think it's probably fair to say the Leviathans just 2-0.
Frost?
I think Leviathans are just synergized a lot faster than everybody else. They don't have to be on the training grounds right now. I also like to believe in the integrity of the league. I'd like it to be a 2-1 for Leviathans, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was a 2-0.
All right, I think a 2-0 Leviathans from Frost there. I think I've been burned voting against Leviathans a couple of times in the viewer points. So yeah, you're not gonna catch me doing that again. So Leviathans 2-0 from Pam here. All right, last set of week 3. Let's start with you here, sLainy. Scarabs versus Kings.
I mean, I think it's obviously people are probably just going to say 2-0 for Kings, but I think the Kings are pretty bad in picks and bans, and I think we can beat them in that. And then if we practice this week well and fix the issues that we need to work on, that we could genuinely beat them. And I say that like with actually like a lot of confidence. So I want to say 2-1 for us.
All right, 2-1 for the Scarabs from sLainy. Frost, what about you?
This was a funny one because even though I had them at 0-2 on the other one, this one, I don't know about winning the whole thing, but definitely going to take one convincing game just because Zap is a strange one. No respect for bottom teams, but if there's any player that he does respect, he puts his work into it. And I don't know if there's that many players he respects on the level of Twig.
Even Netroid, I think in the ADC role, Zap definitely respects Netroid.
He does, but also just because he's Zap, he doesn't respect any ADC, right? Sure. Enough to be like, you know what, you're legit, but you're not better than me, right?
Yeah, you're right.
But he does put a lot of respect into like the other roles, and he's not afraid of showing that. I think this is going to be a love letter for Twig. I'm expecting at least 2-1 from the Scarabs, but this one, I'll be screaming if it's 2-0.
So you got 2-1 Scarabs for they're gonna be
2-1. You know what? Yeah, I'll take the leap of faith.
All right, let's go.
2-1.
Get an angry DM.
Yeah. Finish us off here for week 3.
I feel like a spoil spot now. I think Kings 2-0, but I think it's going to actually be really good games. I think the super aggressive Scarab style is going to be good into it. I think it's going to be a really good learning experience playing against like an organized team like that. So I've got high hopes of the Scarabs, but not enough to not go 2-0.
I'm still taking my bug boys here, of course. Scarabs 2-0 for me. I think that wraps up week 3. Thanks for watching the SPL Rundown this week. Be sure to catch us every week, Thursdays, on twitch.tv/SmiteGame after the SEC. Remember, if you want to catch past episodes or extended cuts, be sure to check those out on the Apam Productions YouTube page. I want to give the floor right now for my analysts and guests here to shout themselves out. Frost, why don't you start us off here?
I am still, and will always be, the other Frost on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch.
Dan?
On YouTube as Betty Smite Esports.
And sLainy, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Twitter is just sLainy Smite, twitch.tv/Moncast. Also, just got to give a shout out to Sot's 100% totem rate. That's insane.
Shout out SOT there. All right, thanks a lot for watching, guys. Remember to like and subscribe on YouTube, and we'll catch you all next week. Bye-bye.